Warren resident. That's B-E-N-O. The reason we are here today is to be transparent and inform the public about the facts surrounding an officer-involved shooting incident. We understand and respect the public's right to know this information. Our goal is to show the public what our officers encountered during this incident. We recognize that this incident is very serious and emotional for the family, the officers, and the community as a whole. A deadly force encounter is something none of us ever want to happen. As you're all likely aware, members of the Warren Police Department were involved in an officer-involved shooting incident on Monday, March 10th, 2025 at approximately 10:15 p.m. At approximately 9:58 p.m. on March 10th, Warren Police Dispatch received a 911 call from a female victim at an address in the 27,000 block of Railroad Street in the city of Warren, which is near 11 Mile Van Dyke. The female victim relayed that her boyfriend, Bino, was on scene, armed with a knife, hiding under a bed. The female victim also relayed to dispatch that Bino would use the knife against officers. You will hear segments of this 911 call and police radio communications, which were recorded. Warren police officers in full uniform and fully marked patrol cars arrived on scene to investigate this domestic violence incident. As officers were arriving, the female victim informed dispatch that Bino had just fled the scene on foot, last seen walking northbound on the adjacent railroad tracks. On scene, as is standard procedure, responding officers activated their body-worn cameras, which recorded this incident. You will then see body-worn camera footage of two officers who were on scene. Make no mistake about it, this footage presents a direct, real-time perspective of what officers encountered. This footage captures a rapidly escalating situation containing graphic and intense language and visuals. Again, our goal is to be transparent and show everybody the realities of this incident. The body-worn camera footage will clearly show officers encounter Bino on the train tracks. You will hear several officers give repeated, clear, loud, verbal commands to Bino. You will see Bino ignore these verbal commands and tell officers, quote, "He has a knife." You'll also see Bino continue to ignore commands while advancing towards officers, still armed with a knife. The footage captures Bino yelling at officers to, quote, "Shoot me." The video will show an officer deploy their taser in an attempt to safely subdue Bino. The taser is ineffective and, as you will see, Bino continues to advance towards the other officers while still holding the knife. An officer-involved shooting then occurs and the threat is neutralized. After stopping this threat, our officers handcuff Bino. This is standard procedure done on scene to maximize officer safety, as handcuffing prior to searching is an essential component of police tactics. Officers immediately summon the Warren Fire Department to the scene and go into rescue mode. Ultimately, Bino was transported to an area hospital by the Warren Fire Department, where he was later pronounced deceased by hospital staff. As previously stated, Bino is a 41-year-old Warren resident. At the time of this incident, Bino had active warrants out of the 16th Circuit Court in Mount Clemens and the 37th District Court in Warren for assaulting police, domestic violence second offense, domestic violence, and disorderly conduct. Further, Bino has previous convictions for disturbing the peace, disorderly conduct, and domestic violence. The investigation so far has confirmed numerous police contacts with Bino. Our report review has shown numerous calls for service regarding domestic violence, as well as several mental health-related contacts, including instances in which Bino has had to be petitioned by officers for threatening suicide or actual suicide attempts. As we will all see from the video, this deadly force encounter happened very quickly and was over in a matter of seconds, highlighting the split-second nature of decisions officers have to make in the real world when confronted with a deadly force threat. We can report that the female victim on scene who was assaulted, thankfully, suffered no injuries. In addition, thankfully, no officers were injured during this incident. Every aspect of this incident is under an open and active investigation, which will ensure the most accurate conclusions can be reached. We will now play the video.
to get my residence.
What's the address?
Road Street.
Is there
I'm
a
still trying to
trailer
go
number?
for it. I believe my ex-boyfriend is up under my bed and he is armed with a knife and I have 3 dogs.
Okay, what makes you think he has a knife?
Because he does, he has a pocket knife on him. And it's still totally not.
Okay.
They said he will pull it on your officers. Can I go outside until your officers arrive?
I want you to go wherever you feel safe. Do you think he's gonna pull the knife on you?
I don't know, he could pull it on your officers or me.
Okay. All right, then I want you to go to where you feel safe.
Now he's outside on the premises, ma'am, so
Okay.
he's gonna play with my floor. He's running down the railroad tracks, ma'am.
He's running down the railroad track? Which direction?
Yep. Towards 12 miles.
He's running towards 12 miles down the railroad track.
He's currently running towards 12 miles down the railroad track, and he did state that he will pull him in an officer.
He's right there, out of you. One in front of you guys. Pull the knife.
Keep it here.
The ground! On your belly! No! Get on your belly! Get on your belly! Get on the fucking ground now! Stand up, guys. Get on the ground!
I got a knife!
Get on the ground! They'll fuck you up! Show me your fucking hand! Drop the knife! Taser. Drop the knife! Get on the fucking ground! Get on the fucking ground now!
Drop it.
Not illegal.
No.
Get on the fucking ground.
Get on the fucking ground.
Get on the ground. Get on. Get on the ground. You got him.
Show me your fucking hand.
Get on the fucking ground.
Drop the knife.
Get on the ground.
Drop the knife.
Okay, good morning. Eric Hawkins, ERICHAWKINS, Police Commissioner here in the city of Warren. You know, this incident was tragic on so many levels. You know, we have an individual who chose, for reasons that are not fully understood by us at this time, to put himself in a position where officers had to use deadly force in order to protect themselves, resulting in the loss of life. We have officers who have to manage their emotions with this incident, because no officer wants to become involved in a deadly force situation, particularly one in which a life is lost. And then you have families and friends of both the suspect and the officers who are involved in this, who are impacted. And then you have, of course, members of the community who may be unsettled by this incident. So we don't take this lightly. We understand the magnitude of what happened, and that is why we are very methodical and very diligent in how we are approaching this to make sure that it's handled appropriately. And as Lieutenant Gajewski said, we thank our fire department for being on scene timely and rendering aid. A testament to the partnership that we have with the fire department here in this city. And so when we examine this incident as a whole, what we really have are two overarching elements. We have what happened, or the facts, and then we have what are the underlying causes that contributed to this incident. And so the facts are fairly straightforward. You know, we had an individual who was involved in a domestic violence incident, armed with a knife. The domestic violence victim told our dispatchers that this individual was armed. This individual may harm our officers. Gave a location where this suspect was last seen, and our officers saw this suspect shortly thereafter. You know, officers first saw this person when he was approximately 100 feet away from the officers, and immediately started giving verbal commands, giving this person an opportunity to stop, to give up, to abandon whatever intentions he had at that point. And this person continued advancing despite these very clear and concise commands from our officers to stop. We attempted to use less lethal force in order to stop the person. The officer saw the knife. Officers continued giving these commands. The person got within what we estimate to be around 12 feet away from our officers, continued advancing after the failed taser deployment, and there was a discharge of firearms from our officers. So the facts are fairly straightforward, and we stand by our officers in this case. This is an unfortunate use of force. You know, again, we try to resolve all of our incidents that we have in a peaceful manner, but this was one of those cases where our officers had no choice but to protect themselves from harm from this person. So the facts are fairly straightforward. But then we look at the underlying causes. And that's a little bit more complex, because we're looking at this crossroads between mental health and domestic violence. You know, these are two issues that communities across this country are struggling to deal with. Police departments across this country are having troubles and challenges in dealing with these issues of mental health and domestic violence. And for example, weeks before this incident ever happened, we did a deep dive into our data related to violent crime in this city. And what we found is that over half of the aggravated assaults or felony assaults that occurred in this city over the last 2 years had a domestic violence nexus. And what really startled us is when we found that almost 70% of our homicides had a domestic violence nexus during this same period of time. And then we look at our mental health. Over the last year alone, we responded to over 1,500 calls for service involving individuals who have some sort of mental illness. This year alone, we have responded to over 270 calls for service for individuals who have some sort of mental health challenge. Approximately 4 calls per day so far this year. This is an issue that communities across the country, that society has to deal with, and we're going to have to make sure that we're collaborating and partnering with a lot of our social service agencies and other entities who specialize in dealing with mental health and domestic violence. But we were proactive because well before this incident happened, we recognized that as a police department, we had to do something to help our community deal with domestic violence and mental health. And so we were already in the infancy stages of creating a program that would help members of this community, and as well as the police department, deal with domestic violence. A partnership with our courts, partnership with our community, partnership with other social service agencies. We'd already begun the process of developing a crisis intervention team program that would eventually train all of our officers in dealing with individuals who have mental health challenges and while they're in the line of duty. So this is something that we've recognized. We've been very proactive with this, but nonetheless, it's something that we still have some work to do as a community, as a society. And so I can't overstate how serious this is emotionally, mentally, for everybody involved. Our condolences, as I said before, go out to the family of the deceased. We're doing everything we can to ensure that our officers, as well as their families, have all the support that they need, the appropriate treatment to recover from this and get back to work. And we want the public to know that there are resources available for domestic violence and mental health. And if you are involved or know that someone else who's involved in a domestic violence situation or someone who is suffering from severe mental illness, then we strongly encourage folks in the community to reach out to some of these social service agencies and some of these other organizations that have ample resources to help people to navigate these very complex issues associated with that. And so with that, I'll now answer a limited amount of questions.
I'm sorry, can you just speak to what kind of training warrant officers are currently getting for dealing with people with mental health issues, being that you have 4 calls a day that involve that?
Yes, and so we recognized that we were seeing an increasing amount of these calls, and so months ago, the department started developing a crisis intervention team program. And what that is a nationally recognized program that trains police officers in recognizing individuals who are under severe mental health challenges and how to intercede and intervene, if you will, in some of those situations in a way that has a high likelihood of a positive outcome. So we've already had some officers who are trained in that. They'll be trained as trainers, and they'll be training our entire department. But other thing that we're doing as well is our officers are all undergoing emotional intelligence training as well. And so while that does not specifically deal with domestic violence, it deals with how our officers perceive their own emotions and the emotions of others when they're out in the field and they interact with someone who may be under some sort of distress. So this could be someone who has a substance abuse issue or mental health issue or a domestic violence issue, or someone who just is having some problems managing their own emotions. It teaches and trains our officers to manage their own emotions when they're dealing with those things like that. So those things are in the works. We were already had those programs that they were in their infancy well before this even started. And we plan on continuing this as we move forward.
I apologize in advance for questions that may seem 20/20 hindsight.
Yes.
How many officers discharged their weapons? How many times was this individual shot? Do you know?
So we had the 2 officers who discharged their weapons. And I don't have the, right now, I can get you that information after the press conference, the amount of times that the person was shot.
So
But
204 responding.
correct.
And you mentioned they had no choice. Again, the 2020, I don't mean to be this, but I'm just gonna flat ask it.
Yeah.
Further negotiation, shooting to wound somebody, why lethal force? And you definitively said they had no choice.
So we, and just to kind of restate some of the obvious facts that we had. So we had a person who had already made some threats to harm police officers. The officers knew that. These were some credible threats. The officers saw that this person, in fact, had a weapon, just as described. And this person was making movements consistent with someone who had plans on harming officers. And so this person got within a certain range of these officers, and it's generally accepted that if someone has a knife or a sharp-edged instrument, and they get within a certain distance within anyone, then there's only so much time for a person who is a potential victim to respond in order to protect themselves. Now, generally that distance, which is commonly referred to as a reactionary gap, is generally considered to be somewhere around 21 feet. So the person within 21 feet, what the experts say is that they have enough time to advance and to cause harm to a person that's within that zone before that person can draw their weapon, aim, and neutralize the threat. So this person had gotten to within 12 feet or so of our officers, despite commands leading up to that to stop, get down, cease your movements, drop your weapon. And the officers, even at that moment in time, and if we recall from the video, they were actually walking backwards. So they were trying to increase this gap, even though this person was well within the danger zone. And once the taser, the less lethal form of instrument that we had, was ineffective, it became apparent to the officers that this person was going to continue this assault, and the officers made a split-second decision at that point, a real-life split-second decision with the facts that they had and with the emotions and the tensions as they were to protect themselves. And their decision at that point was to discharge their firearms in order to neutralize that threat. Based on the information, the preliminary information that we have right now, and the facts that we have right now, I stand by that decision.
My last question would be, oftentimes law enforcement agencies in this type of situation will have another department handle an investigation. Is that happening here, or is this internal at this point?
This would be internal. It's an internal investigation at this point.
Why not Washtenaw County or MSP?
Well, a decision was made to handle this internally. We have the resources to do it. We have the expertise to do it. It's something that is it's within best practices of agencies who are accredited in the state of Michigan, because, you know, as most folks know, the city of Warren is one of 15 agencies across the state of Michigan that have been accredited by the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. And one of the things that they look at, the state, when they're deciding whether or not to grant accreditation, is what are the processes that are in place for reviewing and investigating officer-involved shootings, among other things. So the policy that's in place here, and that's been in place, has already been reviewed by the state, by Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards, and deemed to be a standard that's within best practices. Now, it's not ironclad, because there may be some situations where we may look to an outside agency for either an officer-involved shooting or some other incident involving our officers to have someone else conduct the investigation. But we're confident in this case that we have the expertise, we have the objectivity, we have the professionalism, and we have a number of officers and detectives available to adequately and and professionally and sufficiently investigate this case.
Commissioner,
Yes.
to clarify, 4 officers are on paid administrative leave, is that correct?
Yes.
And then 2 fired shots?
Yes.
Can you tell us how many shots were fired and how many hit the individual after the press conference?
Yes, after the, because I don't have that information, but yeah, we'll get that to you.
And then 1 officer deployed a taser.
Yes.
Was that officer who deployed the taser one of the people who fired
No.
the
No,
gunshots?
no, so we had 2 officers who discharged their weapons. We have 1 who discharged a taser, and we had another that was there in a supportive capacity that did not fire a taser or discharge a taser, nor did that person discharge a firearm. But that person, because of proximity and involvement in the incident itself, we just decided, just as a precaution, to put that person on administrative leave as well.
Okay. Have any of these individuals been involved with an officer-involved shooting or had any prior discipline that you're aware of?
I don't have that information. Yeah, I don't know.
I did have one more for point of
Yes.
clarity, please. And in your investigation, did the officers shoot with intent of lethal force, or was that just the result of the threats you described and they felt spur of the moment, fired? But was there intent, or is there a delineation you can make there?
Yes, so officers, and this is a common misperception for some people. When we have an officer-involved shooting, some people feel that we shoot to kill, or we're shooting to for whatever reason. But that's not how our officers are taught. Our officers are taught if there's a threat, then we're discharging our weapons to neutralize a threat. And in order to neutralize a threat, usually a center mass is where an officer is aiming, because that is what studies and practice have shown has the best chances of neutralizing a threat. And so we don't shoot for ankles, we don't shoot for hands and arms and things like that. If a situation has gotten to a point where lethal force or deadly force is necessary because an officer feels that his or her life is in danger or the life of somebody else is in danger, then we are shooting to neutralize that threat, stop that particular threat.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And for clarity, there's no criminal charges at this time against any officers or anybody in this case?
No.
Would you call this a death by suicide or a death by cop?
It certainly looks like it. When we hear that this person had a knife from a victim and had explicitly told the victim, in this case, that he may harm officers, and then when you look at his movements as the officers approached or confronted him, and he's over 100 feet away, and he continues despite officers with handguns out, officers loudly making verbal commands to stop, lie down, drop your weapon, continues to advance, and then makes comments like "shoot me." This certainly looks like this is a person who had suicide by cop as an intent, and and really put our officers in a position that no officer wants to be put in. All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Again, make sure you sign or scan the QR code, and we'll get the video presentation out here shortly. Thanks.
Would it be possible to clear out